So, the name of my veteran is Michael Rubenstahl. His birthday is March 26, 1985, and he serves in the U.S. Air Force. And this interview is being conducted in Kentwood, Michigan, and my name is Heather Asuncion, and I am his neighbor. And this interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. All right, so Mike, where were you born?
Peoria, Illinois, March 26, 1985.
So, when did you know that you wanted to enlist?
I never really knew. I can't tell you an exact date, but with aviation, since I was real small, I always liked aviation, and that's how I kind of got, I guess, focused on the Air Force overall. I grew up in a school where it was a fairly well-off area, and no one really joined the military at all. So it was you go to college, and that's it. That's the only option. So I joined the Air Force reserves, which they tell you is 2 weeks a year and 1 week in a month, which isn't always the case, but it's usually a lot more than that. But so I joined when I was about 18, just after high school.
So you said that hardly anyone really enlisted, so you didn't have any other family members who served?
No, in my family, in my immediate family, there isn't anyone that I know of. So yeah, it's just me.
So why did you choose this specific branch of service? You said that you were really interested in aviation from a young age.
Yeah, I wanted to get into aviation. This was a really easy way to do it too. When I was 18, I was fixing airplanes and doing all that kind of good stuff. And most jobs you have when you're fresh out of high school and you're 18, I was doing a lot more than that.
So did you have any specialized training?
For my job with the Air Force, communications and navigations systems on heavy airlift aircraft, the upfront training was about a year. Boot camp was the 7 or 8 weeks, whatever it was. Then after that, the training for the job that I was in was pushed just about a year, plus some on-the-job training after that.
So what exactly do you do for job training and such?
So the actual first set of training was classroom based. The first part with boot camp, I guess, that's all a very hands-on, high-stress kind of thing. But the actual job training, it was a combination of lecture and lab training.
So where do you serve?
My unit right now with the reserves is out of Youngstown, Ohio.
So have you witnessed any duties on the front line, or what do you do exactly?
So I'm in the rear with the gear most of the time is kind of the term. We fly C-130s all over the world, the good places, the bad places. So in the desert we are theater operations, but I also spent a lot of time in Turkey and Europe and some other places as well.
So how many places would you say you've been since you've started?
I've been on, I think, every continent except Australia and Antarctica, so a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long are you away for a majority of the time?
With the reserve lifestyle and the guard lifestyle, the minimum is 1 week a month, 2 weeks a year, which I said earlier is not really the case. Our unit, when we deploy, we don't bring all of our aircraft. We bring about a third to half of them at a time, and we are assigned somewhere every 18 months. We go for about 5 or 6 months at a time. I think it's supposed to be 150 days tours. So since we don't take all of our planes, we don't take everyone. So the deployment cycle for my shop that I'm in is you're usually on every other trip to the desert.
Is there any mission that you thought was the most memorable, or any trip that you thought was most memorable?
The most memorable one, or I guess most impactful one, is back in 2007, 2008, sometime around then, I was stationed this was at Al-Udeid Air Force Base, and we have planes that at the time they were flying all the time, and we always had one on the ground that was always on alert, and if its main goal is if someone was hurt downrange, it went down and then came back. So it was on alert. It got called up to alert, which means everyone comes out. It's up in the air within usually 20 minutes. And it came back, and they had a really rough flight. They were getting shot at, and like everyone on the plane, the crews were just they came off and they were just cursing and all that kind of stuff. And but they pulled out this kid just having the worst day of his life. Had to be 19-year-old kid, just bloodied up, and he was going to get help. And so that's the kind of stuff when you see it, it's like that's why we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you mainly stay in touch with families and friends when you're OA?
If you're CONUS, it's just kind of the same. You use the phone or online or whatever. If you're outside the states, depending where you are, I've been some places where you can just go online, send an email to keep up, Skype, things like that. It's gotten, where I've been at least, throughout the years, there's a lot more communication. When I first joined, people would still take out, their pens and paper and write things back and forth. But usually now you don't see that a whole lot anymore. It's just you go online and you call, if you can, or at least send an email. All depends where you're at.
So it says that you've been actively serving for about 13 years now. So I'm sure you've made some friendships with people.
Oh, yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
With the reserves, one unique part about it is when you're active duty, you change where you're at all the time. So you usually stay in a place for 2 to 4 years, and you go somewhere else, and so you always meet new people and things like that. With the reserves, it's very unique in the sense that I've been with some of the same guys my whole career. I've seen guys, come and go, and now that I've been in 13 years, I look back and there's a few of us that have been here the whole time I'm here, and everyone else is new. But so there's been a lot of friendships that you have that you just can't find anywhere else.
Do you still get in contact with them or still have reunions with them?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Is it hard to readjust once you come back, or is it pretty normal?
It's difficult. It's not always streamlined. Depends where you work to and what your actual situation is back home, kind of thing. It's a lot harder on some people than others. I've never had a huge challenge where I didn't know what to do or things like that, but it's a huge issue right now. It really is.
These are actually really hard. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. You're doing fine. I have the hard part. You just gotta ask questions.
So when was your most recent deployment or?
The last time I was to the desert, and that's really what we consider that now, a deployment was 2012. So I'm expecting to be on one probably in the next year or so. Again.
So since you said that people come and go, are you still expecting some of the same people that you previously worked with or new people?
It's a mixture of both. I expect some of the same guys to be there all the time. I guess once you hit about 8 or 10 years, people that are usually in for 10 years, they tend to stay more. Usually people, if they are going to leave, it's within the first 2 enlistments.
Why would you say that is?
Retirement. Once you hit 20 years, you get one. If you don't, then you don't. So if you put in 19 years and 360 days, well, you're close, but not close enough.
Oh.
So so once you, I guess, at least for me, that was the big point. I've been in 10 years. Do I stay 10 more and get a retirement, or am I done?
What encouraged you to stay in?
I still like what I do a lot too. With what I do on the outside now of the Air Force, I would not have my job if it was not for the Air Force, hands down.
So what do you do right now then?
I'm a systems engineer for GE Aviation Systems. I work with avionics architectures and things like that.
Are they really flexible with when you have to leave, if you have to leave?
So far they have been. I've only worked for them for a couple of years. The company itself promotes a pretty good Guard Reserve mix. My previous employer, the FA with the government, they were very good with it as well.
So, I feel like I've already asked this question, but like, what's the most like action you've seen?
I haven't seen combat action, if that's what you're going for. So it's more you're deployed, I guess the word action's a little bit vague, but it's when we're out there and we work, you're working 12, 14, 16-hour days every day. So it's just a long, stressful time when you're over there.
So I'm assuming when you get back, you have like a lot of sleep to catch up on because you're up for so many
You
hours
you
a day.
you learn not to need a whole lot of sleep, kind of thing. It's the cycle I was on last time was supposed to be 12-hour days, and ended up being 13, 14-hour days most of the time, and you were supposed to be on 6 days, off 1 day. But that off day, I mean, you're overseas in a tent somewhere and deployed on a flight line somewhere in the desert, so there's not a whole lot of things to do all the time, except sleep.
So, how has being in the Air Force affected your life?
Well, I touched on it before, where I'm at right now, I would not be where I'm at. I mean, just, I went to college at the same time, but with aviation, the reason I got the job I have right now for sure is because of the Air Force experience, plus education as well. And my last job with the FAA for 8 years, I guess it was 7 or 8 years, I knew some people from my base that actually helped me get the job too. So it's just been a huge help for everything.
Any life lessons that you really learned from?
Don't take it for granted, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I guess one like impactful thing I've seen that sticks with me. We were in Doha, Qatar, and we were off base for the day, and I mean, it's a pretty affluent area, I guess, for the most part, but there's a clear line in culture where if you're from there, you're wealthy. If you're not, you're poor. And we were out to eat. We'd been there for a couple months already. It was like our first time off base, and so we all went out. I think it was 8 or 10 of us. We got this big dinner, and we each, I think we tipped the guy like $20 each. So he got a really big tip, but he came up to us just crying afterwards. He was so happy. So it's something here where you take for granted that kind of stuff. I mean, he didn't make that much in a month, and we didn't really think anything of it. It's just like, hey, you did a good job. It's our first time out in 2 months. Let's treat the guy right, kind of thing. So it's that kind of stuff you see too with cultural
So I'm assuming
experiences.
it's definitely rewarding to see that kind of stuff happen.
Absolutely, yeah. You hear about a lot of like the bad stuff and things like that, but that's the kind of stuff you don't see or hear about most of the time.
All right, I think I am good. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Not a problem. Not a problem.